When visiting the Willamette Valley, experiencing Oregon wine country is something you won't want to miss. Hi, I'm Sarah Shin from Global Human Collective. Today, we'll go to experience Oregon wine country as we visit Bryn Mawr Vineyards, a small, family-owned winery in the Willamette Valley, about 12 miles or 19 kilometers outside of Salem. At the tasting room, we can see the most beautiful views in this part of the valley, as well as taste many award-winning wines. We'll learn more about the vineyard from John Lauer and Karen Smith, and we'll do a wine tasting to learn more about wine vocabulary and how to describe wines. I'm really excited to introduce you to some excellent people and outstanding wines. So let's head out to Bryn Mawr Vineyards. Hi everyone, this is Sarah. Thanks for joining us for our very first episode. We are really excited to be at Bryn Mawr Vineyards today. You might notice that we are in masks today, and that's because of COVID-19. So we're socially distancing and being really careful. We know that also makes it a little bit hard for our English language learners, but we will be adding things to the video to help you with your learning as we go along. One thing that we feel is really important is during this time to be supporting local businesses because of COVID and how much it's impacted a lot of the smaller businesses. And Bryn Mawr Vineyards has been a place that I've really loved over the years. And I'm so excited to be here today with Karen Smith, who's the Director of Hospitality, who will be telling us all about the history and taking us through some wine tasting today.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for asking us to participate. We're also very excited to be a part of this, and we got really lucky today. I ordered a beautiful day, and it happened to work out. So we'll get a really good view of some of the stuff here. I'm going to take a peek this direction. Unfortunately, the clouds are covering up a little bit, but usually right over here we can see Mount Jefferson, but it looks like the clouds are covering it up today. So let's get started. What questions do you have? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think first just a little bit about the vineyard, kind of the history, maybe a little bit about the owners, and what makes Bryn Mawr so special.
Oh gosh, what makes Bryn Mawr special? Well, let's talk about first the name. It's hard to pronounce. It looks a little bit weird. Bryn Mawr, it's Welsh, and it means high hill. The original owners named it that. When the Lauers purchased it, Kathy and John Lauer, when they purchased it in 2009, they decided to keep the name. As their son David likes to say, they couldn't think of anything more creative, and it's a lot of paperwork to change a business name. So we stuck with Bryn Mawr, and the reason that is such a perfect name is because of our elevation. We're up at about 875, which gives us some lovely winds all year round, and especially because of the Van Duzer corridor, which we'll take a look at when we go outside. So the Lauers purchased it in 2009. It was John's longtime dream to have his own vineyard. And, as my understanding is, because I was not around at that time, he, quickly realized he was in over his head. And, by an odd circumstance, the original owner had put up an ad at a local, wine equipment store for somebody to live on site to maintain the vineyard. And Rachel Rose responded to that ad, but of course, by the time she responded, the Lauers owned the property. But it really worked out perfectly. Rachel has a background in viticulture. That's what her first degree was in. And so she lived here on site and started producing the wines for them. So Rachel has been with Bryn Mawr since the beginning, the beginning of John and Kathy's era. So we're really lucky to have her. She's an amazing winemaker. One of the great things about Oregon is that it is super friendly to female winemakers, and we have many in the state, and I'm so proud and honored to be able to work with Rachel and sell her wine because she really does make a beautiful product.
That is fantastic. And I mean, we've had the privilege of being at some of the wine club members' parties at the Lauer's house, and they're just such a warm and welcoming family. So I think that's one thing that we really love about Bryn Mawr is that just the family and all of you are just such great people.
I really think that works in our favor. Like I said, I haven't been with them from the get-go. I have only been with them about 18 months. This is my 4th winery. So I have some experience in the wine world, and there's very few wineries that claim that don't claim to be family run. But the reality is most of them are not. And a lot of them that are family run are pretty dysfunctional. That is not the case here. It is absolutely family run. Every single one of their children has worked in the winery in some capacity. David, the most, he's worked here in the tasting room, he's worked in the vineyard, and he's worked in the winery itself with Rachel. So he's the youngest son, and probably the most affected because when they purchased the property, I believe he was a junior or senior in high school. So he's been here pretty much from the get-go and been involved in every aspect. So in that regard, they're definitely a family winery. And as you mentioned, the club parties, which I never got to be a part of, were hosted in their home by John and Kathy. They were always there, always present, and they remain that way. Kathy is a very successful attorney, and she has an incredibly demanding schedule, but she always makes sure that she is in town for the club parties because it's important to them that they really show we are a family winery. And so when they hire, in fact, my position is the only one they've advertised for, but it's really important to them that the people that work here also function as family members. And so actually all of us frequently get asked if we are part of the family, which is really lovely. Sometimes people confuse me with Kathy, which is even nicer. Yes, absolutely. If you think I'm as awesome as she is, I will take it. Thank you very much. But we really do try to function here as part of the Lauer family so that our guests feel like they're also part of the Lauer family.
It's really wonderful. It just shows in everything that y'all do. Speaking of the area that we're in, one thing that you hear a lot with when you talk about wineries is AVA. And so I was wondering if you could explain like what an AVA is and like where we're at.
Yeah, the wine world really loves their secret language, and it can be daunting to some folks. So I'm always here to help dispel that. So AVA is American Viticulture Area. And what that means is that it has been designated as an area that is really great for growing wine grapes. So we are in the Willamette Valley, which is an AVA. The Willamette Valley has 9 sub-AVAs, and one of those is the Eola Amity, which is where we are right now, is the Eola Amity AVA.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about why Bryn Mawr, what's so special about Bryn Mawr as being a part of that AVA?
Absolutely. So our location is, like I said, perched pretty high at 875. And we go a little bit higher in a few other spots. What sets us apart in the AVA, in the Eola Amity AVA, is the Van Duzer corridor. And when we step outside, you'll be able to see that, but there's the Van Duzer gap. And that gap brings in all that ocean air and that ocean breeze. And so we end up getting this really lovely breeze. And the perfect example of what that breeze is actually our Riesling. So we have a bone-dry Riesling. People always think of Riesling as being sweet. We have a bone-dry one. And the reason it's so dry is because of those winds. So those winds come in and they toughen up the skins and they keep the grapes cool. So I like to say it's God's air conditioner. And what that does is keeping those grapes cool keeps the acidity level really high and gives you a nice sharpness to it and keeps that sugar level really low. So it's a perfect way to get high acidity in the wines. And why do you want high acidity? Because high acidity gives you longevity in storing the wines. So winemakers make wine to be consumed today. The average shelf life of a bottle of wine, once it leaves the retailer, is 2.5 days. So that includes people like myself who lay wine down, and some customers of mine who maybe drink it in my parking lot. So with that in mind, if 2.5 days is as long as that bottle is going to last before it's unopened, you obviously don't want to produce a wine that you have to wait 10 years to drink. The beauty of a boutique winery is that you can do both. So we have a wine that's very consumable today, but also a wine that has some lovely longevity. And the reason we have that is because of that higher acidity from that lovely breeze that the Van Duzer corridor and the Van Duzer Gap give us.
Excellent. Well, you've been talking so much about the wines. I am really excited to, I know I've tasted your wines, but I always find something that I like about them every time I taste them. So
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to maybe going out on the deck and kind of looking around a little more and getting into the wines. So I'm here with John Lauer, the owner at Bryn Mawr Vineyards, and we've got Krista and Jeffrey's block here. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a story about that.
So these two blocks are named after our two oldest children, Jeffrey and Krista. Our winemaker and I wanted to experiment a little bit with grapes and land to see what differences there were in the vineyard. So when we bought the property, my wife and I bought the property, there were 2 acres of grapes on the property. The oldest one, which is down by the road, which faces a little bit off to the east, that's Jeffrey's block. It's the oldest block of grapes on the property. So we named it after the oldest child, which seemed to make sense. There's a method to our naming madness, actually. And then right on the other side of these cypress trees, the steep slope that you can see through the trees, that's Krista's block. Krista's block is the highest block, at the time was the highest block of grapes on the property. So we decided to name it after our 6-foot-tall, red-headed, left-handed daughter. So each year we do a wine that's made exclusively from Jeffrey's block and one that's made exclusively from Krista's block, just to see what happens because of where they are on the vineyard. So each year we'll take approximately 4 barrels, maybe 5 barrels of grapes from each block, and we'll create a separate wine. On paper, they're absolutely identical wines. It's all Pinot. It is all Dijon clone. Everything is pruned the same way. It's trellised the same way. It's picked the same day. It's made the same way. Same yeast, same barrels. It's bottled the same day. Perfect twins, except they're completely different wines. And they're different wines because of where they are on the property. Jeffrey is over the hill, so it faces east away from the winds that come from the west predominantly. And a gentle slope, clay soil, kind of just a gentle, mellow part of the vineyard, which describes my son for the most part. On the other end, you have Krista's block. It's the real ankle breaker section of the vineyard. It's steep, it's high, it's rocky, it's windy, it faces due south. It just has all the elements working against it. And so when we have these two wines, they are very different. It's because of where they grew on the vineyard. So I think we kind of proven a little bit of environment and the importance that we have with that. We carry on with in the tasting room. We'll taste a Jeffrey's block. We'll taste a Krista's block. And for years we've had a poster board or cork board in the taste room, and people will get to vote which is their favorite between Krista and Jeff. They're both college athletes, so they're both competitive. But it's all done in good fun, even though Jeff claims that the voting has been fraudulent the last few years because Krista seems to have won. So, so that's back when those claims were funny. But they are very different wines, and it's really interesting because people will come in and they'll have the wine 1 week, and then they'll come back a month later and they'll try the wines again, and they like the other wine. They thought, I could have sworn I liked this wine, but I like this wine. Said they've changed. I mean, wines are living things. They change in the bottle, and this is a perfect way to show people not only what differences in land and environment do, but the fact that that just the aging of wine it affects different wines differently.
That is so cool. And so you have one other block here that's named after your youngest son, right?
David's block. It's a Pinot Blanc and Chardonnay, so it's all white wine. So because it was the youngest block on the property, we named it after our youngest child, who's blonde. So we decided, blonde goes with the white wines. I mean, there's a madness to our methods in terms of naming. So there's a basis for it, and it seems to work pretty well. People like being a part of that. They like to participate.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for sharing that.
Sure.
So now we're here with the flight. Karen, I'm really excited to get into the flight. Can you tell me about the wines today?
Absolutely. So we have a winter flight. During the summer, when we have a little bit more foot traffic, we sometimes offer up to 3 different flights. But in the winter time, we offer just one basic flight. We just don't have enough foot traffic to open everything. So with this particular flight, what we have to offer is the 2018 Estate Riesling, the 2017 Estate Chardonnay, the 2016 Estate Pinot Noir, the 2017 Jeffrey's Block and Krista's Block Pinot Noir. Of course, you talked about that with John. And then rounding it out with the 2015 Tempranillo. So the Estate Riesling, I love pouring because people always think that a Riesling is sweet, and ours is, of course, bone dry. It has some lovely acidity to it and some longevity. So this is actually a wine that you can hang on to for a number of years and still get really lovely results. In fact, we did a vertical of our Rieslings, and we're really impressed. We went as far back as 2013, I believe, 2014. And we're really impressed with how well they had held up. It was kind of an exciting little flight. And then, of course, we have the Estate Chardonnay. I love pouring the Chardonnay because we hear so often, I don't like Chardonnay. And that's unfortunate because Chardonnay is such a lovely grape and a really lovely wine if you do it right. In Oregon in general, they tend to be really lightly oaked, and particularly here as well, very lightly oaked, elegant. You get a better sense of what the Chardonnay grape tastes like instead of tasting a huge hunk of wood or a stick of butter.
Sounds lovely.
Yes, it is. Much nicer. Isn't that much nicer than eating something that's a stick of butter? Although, I don't know, that fried butter at the fair does seem kind of exciting.
Too much excitement for me.
Then we jump into the Estate Pinot Noir. And I love the Estate Pinot Noir because it represents the estate. What Rachel does is pulls grapes from every block that we have here for Pinot Noir. And so you'll see the 777 in there, the 115, the Primard, the Wädenswil. All of the Pinot Noir grapes that we have right here on site are in this wine, and they're from each of the Pinot Noir blocks that we've got. So it really represents the terroir of Bryn Mawr beautifully, which is why we like to call it Bryn Mawr in a bottle. Because not only are you getting our terroir, but you're getting a snapshot of what that harvest had to offer. So the Estate Pinot Noir is a favorite among the staff because of that, and it also tastes really good.
I really love the estate, especially I feel like the blends sometimes have that complexity that you don't always get with the single clone.
I agree, absolutely. And then, of course, the Jeffreys and the Kristas, which you talked about with John, and we always pour those side by side in the tasting room. As he said, they are twins on paper until you taste them in the glass, and that's really a very different experience, and it's a lot of fun. Our customers are very divided. We never hear, oh, I like them both. People are very firm about what they like. It's a very clear, concise line. We have what we call mixed marriages because there are some couples where one likes the Jeffreys and the other likes the Christas, and they have to learn to figure out how to get along. So,
or they have to buy one of each.
Which is what I usually encourage them to do. That's the best way to solve that argument. And then finishing out with the Tempranillo.
So it's kind of rare to see a Tempranillo on the menu in the Willamette Valley. So I'm really curious about, tell us a little bit about the Tempranillo.
Oh, well, the Tempranillo is certainly special, and especially to our vineyard. It was, as we like to say, days away from death. John really wanted to cut it down. We inherited it with the property. There's a couple rows of it in the Jeffreys block. And we knew it was Tempranillo. We didn't know the clones. We didn't know that much about it, and really weren't having a lot of luck in producing a good Tempranillo. So John really wanted to hack it down and graft in more Pinot. But Rachel convinced him, let's try it just one more year and see if we can't get something out of it. And then if not, then we'll get rid of it. Well, that year happened to be 2012, which is, of course, the famous year in Oregon, the 2012 vintage. We still have people come in and ask about getting 2012, which we always kind of have to laugh because it exists, but only in our private cellars at this point. So 2012 produced a really lovely Tempranillo. As I mentioned earlier, it is something that got us recognized. And as a result of that, and that fabulous year, we decided to go ahead and keep the Tempranillo. Each year is its own challenge. We don't get Tempranillo every year because it does want a hot, dry summer. So for example, 2019, the weather was kind of up and down and really didn't produce great results for the Tempranillo as far as temperature goes. What it did do was produce some lovely juice that we were able to add to our sparkling. So this year the sparkling rosé has some Tempranillo in it, and of course our Pinot Noir. So it has some lovely texture to it that we haven't had in past years. So we're really excited that was a part of it. But like I said, the Tempranillo is difficult to grow, and certainly in the Eola Amity. A lot of Tempranillo comes from southern Oregon, but ours is all grown right here. But you do have to have that hot, dry summer. And if you don't have it, we're just not going to produce a Tempranillo just to produce it. We want to produce the best fruit. Tempranillo is really big. I like to call it a big, sexy beast. It has a lot of flavor going on. It's going to get in there and stomp all over your taste buds. So we actually hold it back for a little while. We're on the current vintage of the 2015, and that's in this little bottle right here, the number 5 for the last tasting. We hold that back so that it's a little bit more palatable for the consumer once we release it. So 2015, and we're in year 2021. We've held that back for a while, but there's a reason behind that. We want you to be able to enjoy it, and holding it back a few years helps smooth out some of the rougher edges on that.
That's so great. So when it gets to the taster, it's like in its prime and you really want to drink it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's really great to hear, all about the wines. And, I've been a fan for a long time, so looking forward to tasting them today.
Oh, well, we're so excited, and I'm excited for you to enjoy this lovely flight on this lovely day just before we get all this crazy snow coming at us.
I know. We'll see. You never know what you're going to get in Oregon.
Yes, yes. So enjoy the flight. Like I said, it is a self-guided tour. And then once you're done, I'll come back and check in on you and see what you liked, and if you need to revisit anything, and if you have any questions.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.